I want to thank you for joining me today. I'm actually super excited to be able to share with you what we have experienced in terms of our own permitting trajectory, which has changed dramatically in 2025. And if there's one thing I'd like you to take away from my presentation today, it's that we have 8 or 9 years of permitting work that has gotten into making Grassy Mountain in Oregon the very first mine ever permitted in the state. And with the changes that have happened this year at the federal level, we are well on track to see that happen inside the next year. So, for those of you who don't know Paramount at all, we are a U.S. domiciled company. We're listed only on the NYSE American Stock Exchange under the symbol PZG, and we have 100% ownership of 2 U.S.-based assets. So Grassy Mountain is our flagship property in eastern Oregon, and we also own the sleeper property in northern Nevada. So just this year in May, Grassy Mountain was added to the Fast 41 transparency list, which is something I'll spend a little bit of time talking on shortly. Between the 2 assets, we have over 4 million ounces of gold resources. Those accrue 1 million ounces to Grassy Mountain in eastern Oregon and 3 million ounces for Sleeper in Nevada. You may recognize some of our shareholders. I'm actually quite blessed to have a core shareholder base who's been there to support us through the lean times, which were basically every year up until 6 months ago, and through good times as well, which has been a critical component of us being able to stay funded to be able to continue on the permitting trajectory, as slow as it might have felt at certain times. So Seabridge Gold is represented on our board. Rudy Franck is our chairman. And you'll also see Chris Reynolds, who's the CFO of Seabridge, is on our board as well. And Ausenco became shareholders because when they did the initial feasibility study on Grassy, they elected at that time to take stock instead of cash and continue to be a very supportive partner for us. So what I've been talking about in terms of the really seismic changes that have happened in the U.S. starting this year was with the March 2025 executive order, which basically said the U.S. has to figure out how to increase mineral production. And the way that they've gone about that is they created a National Energy Dominance Council, which then was tasked with identifying near permit-ready projects to be added to what's called the Fast 41 list. So there's a couple of variations of that, but ultimately what they're trying to do is create a platform where the agencies, the actual permitting agencies, have some accountability for declaring when they're going to get through different stages of the work, and the public is able to track that through two websites. There's something called Fast 41 and something called e-planning, where all that is available. Grassy was very fortunate to be in the second batch of projects that were added to Fast 41 in May of this year. Within 2 months, the Bureau of Land Management contacted us to share with us what our new updated permitting plan was and trajectory, which they'd identified at that time would see us receive a draft EIS, a draft environmental impact statement, in August, and targeting to have the final completed in December. So sure enough, in August, a week ahead of schedule, they delivered the draft EIS. We've also had the opportunity to work very closely with the Bureau of Land Management, which has been a really eye-opening experience in terms of understanding how they apply NEPA and what the new changes have meant, not just to Grassy Mountain, but to other projects, I believe, moving forward. And I'm very happy to report that our team at the Bureau of Land Management continues to work through the government shutdown on our file. So yes, we are on track, that we will see December 19th is the date that they've chosen to publish the final EIS and the record of decision. Now, between now and the end of the year, we're also expecting to receive the draft permits from the state of Oregon. And in a sense, this, I think, is going to be a really critical catalyst, not just for Grassy, but for the rest of the state. There are a number of projects in the state of Oregon, both in gold and in critical minerals, that are looking at development opportunities, but they need to know that they can actually move these things forward to see a lot of capital enter the state. And again, from having worked very closely with these state agencies, in this case over many number of years, I can say that the fact that we've had the draft EIS come from the federal government first does provide some comfort and confidence on the state side. And I do feel good that we'll see these draft permits come out before the end of this year, which would then put us on track to be fully permitted with final state permits that have to legislatively need to be delivered 140 days after the draft. So we will have an incredible amount of visibility on when this permitting journey will be complete, particularly as we compare it to the past number of years where we had no visibility at all. I don't expect many people here have traveled to Eastern Oregon, or maybe even to Oregon at all, but what I do like to point out is Eastern Oregon couldn't be more different from Western Oregon, which is coastal and beautiful, and it's a vacation spot, and I will say that I don't think you could build a mine in Western Oregon. By contrast, Eastern Oregon, right on the border with Idaho, we have a population there which is, it's much more sparsely populated. It's also very poor, and it's very Republican. And so in a sense, you know, the image here on the left is the access road to the project. So it crosses through BLM land. And for those of you who have traveled to Nevada or seen images, it looks very similar. It's a desert terrain, so similar to Nevada, similar to Idaho. And, you know, the image on the right I include because we don't have neighbors that you can see or who can see us. And I think this was a really important consideration when the agencies and the public were reviewing our applications for the permits in the state. That being said, we're also relatively close to decent population centers, so 20 miles from Vail, which is where we have a small office, and I fly into Boise Airport, and then it's about an hour-and-a-half drive to get to the project from there, so it's really quite accessible. Malheur County, where we're based, is the poorest county in the state of Oregon. They have a 20% poverty rate, almost double the state average. They have a median household income of less than $50,000. There are no opportunities for jobs in Eastern Oregon, and particularly not in Malheur County. Paramount, by contrast, will create opportunities for jobs, close to 200 jobs when you include our direct jobs, which will be skilled, varying degrees of skilled jobs, as well as administrative type jobs, and a whole range of opportunities where locals will have not just the opportunity to work with us, but we're going to be looking at designing training programs as well. There's a local community college, Treasure Valley Community College, which is very keen to help us set up training programs for locals. So, you know, when you take all these together, the studies that have been put out show close to 200 jobs to be created in this area, including the indirect and induced jobs that will come from the project. This has led to strong buy-in both county level, at the state level. I'm happy to report bipartisan support at the state level to see this move forward. And now, obviously, we have a very supportive federal government from a permitting standpoint, too. So the project itself, I mentioned at the outset, we have about 1 million ounces at Grassy. The last feasibility study we did was updated in 2022, so it's arguably stale. It was done at a $1,750 gold price with sensitivity up to $2,100. So the metrics you see here are at $2,100 gold, and certainly we are going to be updating this feasibility study. I'm targeting to have that completed in the first half of next year, and so that'll give us an opportunity to show what this could look like under more realistic costing and pricing scenarios. I also like to point out that of the 1 million ounces that we have here, the current mine plan only targets about 40% of those ounces. So we see a lot of opportunity for an extension to this 8-year mine life. I'd describe it really as a worst-case scenario. So this is going to be a very small footprint underground mine, 750-ton-a-day milling operation, producing around 50,000 ounces of gold equivalent annually based on the 22 study. So these are all things that are slated to see updates as the year progresses. Part of the reason that I point out that we have a lot of opportunity for mine life extension stems from this sheet. So all the 1 million ounces at Grassy are here in front of you. The mine that we're building is in the hot pink color, so the greater than 3 grams per ton. So that averages at 6.8 grams per ton. That's only about 150 meters from surface. The low-grade mineralization here on this sheet is about 50 meters from surface. So there's a couple of things to talk about here. One is prior owners and operators of this project, because it has traded hands a number of times over the years, they viewed this as an ideal open pit, and it would have been. However, we were the first ones, I think, that had a better sense of what the permitting and social landscape was in the state of Oregon, that a small underground mine would be a lot more palatable as their first go around from a permitting standpoint. And fortunately for us, the geometry of the deposit laid out a very economic scenario, as I showed you on the prior slide. But we haven't fully drilled this off. There's about 500 holes in total here, so we have a high degree of confidence in what we currently have. What we don't know is what happens further at depth, because the grade does improve at depth. So that's one area that we have an opportunity to add more ounces. The other is, frankly, in this gold price environment, we should probably see an adjustment to the cutoff grade, which will see more of the ounces on this sheet work their way into a mine plan and extend the mine life as well. And then the third being, we have a number of near mine exploration targets that have already been identified. We have not been allocating capital to drilling at Grassy for the simple reason that if we can't prove that you can permit in the state, I don't think investors or shareholders in particular would take kindly upon us spending more money to increase the ounces there until we can show that it's going to move forward. So that's the Oregon side of our story, but as our name suggests, we do have exposure to Nevada as well. And some of you in the room might remember the Sleeper mine from back in the day. It had a pretty famous history. It's in northern Nevada. It had been a former very high-grade producer, producing close to 2 million ounces from one 7 gram per ton head grade, average head grade, through an open pit, heap leach, and mill scenario. They mined that out for 10 years and then drove on and never looked back. So Paramount acquired this in 2010. We've done all the reclamation work at Sleeper. We rebuilt the resource database, but suffice it to say, we do not have 7 gram per ton material anymore. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't be experimenting with permitting in Oregon. What we do have at Sleeper, however, is a big land position. We have 40,000 acres that are largely contiguous that you can see here in the red outline. We also already have 3 million ounces of low-grade resource to start with, and we've just updated this resource so that we have good confidence in where we're going with it. The opportunity here at Sleeper is that it hasn't been drilled in over 20 years, so there's been a lot of improvements when it comes to technology for targeting and everything else, and so for us, now that we have visibility on the permitting trajectory at Grassy, we can start focusing some time and money on Sleeper and an advancement there. In addition to 3 million ounces in a large land package, we also have an enormous amount of data. So this is one of the things that's exciting when you look at future opportunities of what could be done in Nevada. Last little piece of our story from an asset standpoint, it's called Bald Peak in Mineral County, Nevada. This has never been drilled. It's in the red outline here. It does sit on a parallel structure to some other good open pit mines. Borealis is actually being restarted. Hecla is, I understand, spending money on exploration at Aurora. So there's existing infrastructure in the neighborhood. We haven't drilled this yet, although the reason we acquired it through an option was some very strong surface samples of gold that we followed up with in terms of taking our own surface samples and shooting geophysics. Our team that you see here, as I mentioned, we do have strong support from the Seabridge camp. I rely also very heavily on an army of very specialized consultants. Not all of them are on this sheet, but that's how we manage to tick all the boxes that a small company can't afford to do on their own with internal resources. Lastly, I'd say by the numbers, we've had a good year, but we're still trading at a very, very reasonable valuation, I believe, for the catalysts that we have coming up, which we can deliver on the permitting side, and then the optionality to come from future studies, both at Grassy and potentially at Sleeper, to look what another startup scenario could be at Sleeper and what a fresh perspective is on Grassy today. We have, by design, kept the share count low, so less than 80 million shares, and I am happy to see that we've seen a good uptick in the trading volume as well, which I know makes it a lot easier for investors to take comfort in getting in and eventually out and making some money in the stock. So with that, this is what you should look out for from us. Now that the EIS public comment period has come and gone, we should be seeing the state draft permits coming out this quarter, and as well, we'll see December 19th, if they stick to their guns, the Bureau of Land Management will deliver a final EIS and a record of decision for Grassy's construction. And with that, I thank you for your time.
Does anybody have any questions for Rachel? Not one? Go ahead.
Are you still going to get that with the government shutdown, these deadlines?
I am delighted and blown away to report that our BLM team continues to work on our file during the shutdown.
and another one.
So it's kind of like a hurry up and wait till the permitting happens, right? Is there anything corporately in parallel that you're doing?
You mean?
Basically, you're waiting for the permit to come, and another permit will come, and another one will come finally before you corporately hit your milestones. So what is happening within the company apart from just the permitting?
Well, the permitting, I mean, it's clearly a heavy lift, and, you know, it's something that we've been working on for 8 years. So I wouldn't have characterized it as hurry up and wait, because 8 years is a long time to wait. So right now, I feel like, wow, we can actually see that this is on the horizon. I mean, we're talking about 6 months. We're not talking about 6 years anymore. And realistically, I think we should probably see, like I said, the state draft permits and the finals from the feds this calendar year. So we're talking about 2 months or less. And then after that, we'll be waiting for the state to finalize any changes that need to happen from their draft permits. And that will be by Q2.
All right.
So yes, corporately, other than that, will be any studies that we can deliver in the meantime.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right, thank you.